Let's talk to Dr. Andrew Mycock, reader in politics at the University of Huddersfield. Andrew, just give us some context on this, if you would. How significant is this resignation and the manner of this resignation?
I think the significance of the resignation is that if anyone looked back to late 2019 and saw any Prime Minister with an 80-seat majority, it would be stretching most people's imagination to think that within less than 3 years, you would find that Prime Minister to resign by his own party. It's been a remarkable decline in many ways in the political authority of Boris Johnson. Many would argue that it's down to his own personality flaws, but there is a sense that I think that, it really is a unique moment in British politics to see a Prime Minister squander such a significant lead. I think where that leaves British politics is, well, what are the lessons to be learned from the Boris Johnson era? And I think for many, there is a concern that possibly that Boris Johnson's style of leadership, his style of governing the country, drifted into a more presidential territory rather than a more collaborative prime ministerial cabinet-led approach that we're usually used to in the United Kingdom. And that there may be some sense in which there's a need to recalibrate British politics, and it will be likely that the Conservative Party will seek to look for candidates that are not going to be similar in their personality approach to Boris Johnson. And in many ways, maybe his legacy will be is that Britain's experiment with a more populist style leader was a relatively short one.
And was this resignation the story of style? I mean, this resignation was not a dispute about political policy, was it?
In many senses, it was about Boris Johnson's personality, his style of leadership, and particularly his inability at times, apparently, to be able to tell the truth when asked the first time. And I think that over a period of 2.5 years, his party, and particularly his cabinet, became increasingly wary of having to defend their Prime Minister. At the same time, I think that what we've seen, particularly in the last 6 months, has been a slow but certain division within the Conservative Party over policy. Yes, there's a large amount of agreement about getting Brexit done. I think there was support about the way in which Boris Johnson had approached the Ukraine crisis. But I think there was a division growing in the party between those that wanted a small state and a smaller, lower tax take, and those that were more supportive of a more generous, expansive state. And I think that Boris Johnson found himself increasingly struggling to marry and merge those two wings of the party. And I think as we go forward to a leadership election, it'll be interesting to see which candidates support which of those positions in terms of policy as the Conservative Party goes forward.
The newspaper editors will not be getting their headlines ready for tomorrow's newspapers, and people like you will start writing the next politics and history books. What will Boris Johnson's legacy be?
Boris Johnson's legacy will be one where he genuinely shook up British politics. If we go back to his style of leadership as London Mayor, it was very different. We weren't used to that kind of personality-driven form of leadership. And I think particularly his role in the United Kingdom's European Union referendum was instrumental. In many ways, he was the face of Brexit. And not only did he deliver a victory in the Brexit referendum, but he also got Brexit done. And he got it done with a unique style of personality, which often framed himself as being, in many ways, against the establishment, that played to his own unique approach towards politics, which wasn't often serious. At the same time, all of those things came together in many ways to undermine his leadership. And for many, they'll remember a period of British politics which has been defined by chaos and by a sense in which trust in the British political system has slowly but certainly declined. And so, for some, I think there will be a sense of sadness that Boris Johnson's gone. They'll remember him fondly as a politician that said what he was going to do and delivered it. For others, I think there's a sense in which this is a passing of a Prime Minister that was never quite fit for office and proved himself during his period as Prime Minister.
When you teach the politics of international politics in the 2020s, will Trump and Boris be in the same chapter? Are they the same story in many ways?
In some senses, yes. in the fact that they both were outsiders not from a strong political tradition, that they shook up not only the way in which campaigning and the way in which electoral politics was undertaken, but also they changed the parties in which they stood for. And at the same time, I think there's a significant difference between the way in which Donald Trump has approached politics and Boris Johnson has. I think the last few days have really showed the fact that Boris Johnson certainly had a sense in which he had a mandate almost in a presidential sense in terms of the way in which he led the country. But I think that there are certain differences between Boris Johnson and Donald Trump, particularly in the nature of his final resignation. Johnson has gone relatively quietly when we compare to the scenes we saw on January the 6th in terms of Donald Trump. So although they may well be mentioned in the same breath, at times I think we're going to be careful not to make sure that we actually think that they're the same style of politician.
Andrew Mycock at the University of Huddersfield, thank you very much.